Hello and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and I'm here with you on Sunday. I think in a lot of places, certainly I know in the UK and the USA, this is Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to people's fathers out there. This is a Father's Day that, good morning, Sam. I was just noting that today was Father's Day. And so happy Father's Day to everybody's father. My father has passed away a couple of years ago, but we are still going to go today. Doing what we do in our family, which is weirdly there's these. My mother always has this thing about having to go to cemeteries. She goes there quite often, and so she has to go visit her father's grave. She has to visit my father, her husband's grave, and we usually visit my father's parents' graves as well. So that's the exciting thing on the agenda for me today, and then we're going to have lunch. My mother's been quite ill, so my sister wanted to do something that was a little closer to her home so that we weren't out somewhere and where she was far away from certain facilities and so forth, when she's not feeling well. So we're going to basically, my sister's picking me up and probably it's 6:30 a.m. here, probably 10 a.m. and we're going to do that. I did want to say that the first thing is that I had been working on the tarot videos that are going to come out, Aries through Libra for this week. Aries through Virgo, sorry, because I do Libra through Pisces the following week. And I'm doing it not entirely a new way, but before I used to kind of just go house by house and then read by house. So now I'm trying to read it more holistically. So I actually kind of like it better, and I feel like that's easier for me to do since I've been engaged more in channeling work. I'm sorry, I hate my fringe today. It's definitely a hair wash day, but so there's going to be a little bit difference in style, and hopefully people will like it. Part of it was because I've had people say to me, oh, well, I like your readings, but they can be very, very long. And, some people only want something that's like 20 minutes. And so I'm trying to shorten it up a little bit. I mean, not only successfully, but I don't have any that are running to 40 minutes at this point. So we'll see. I've done the first 3 and I'm going to do the last 3 at some point today. The other thing that's news this week is that I'm going to be releasing the Azrael sessions. By Friday, there's only going to be 3 of them. But I'm also going to create an introductory video talking about Archangel Azrael, and I know I already have a video talking about my connection to Azrael, but this is going to be actual channeling sessions, and so I've recorded 2 so far, and I've edited 2, and I have one of them uploaded as an unlisted link, so I do have, I have a couple people, like I said, other people who are either doing the same kind of work that I'm doing, or who are people just who are who I know in my regular day-to-day, they could be friends, they're, fellow practitioners, whatever, who are very well-versed in that sphere. So I was going to have them kind of look at it and say, well, what do you think about these before I put them out? Because any kind of channeling work, especially if you also do academic work, is it puts you kind of in a weird place. You're like, okay, do I really want to put out there? Because to me, I just feel like this is all stuff that's almost happening to me, and I feel like it's like, okay, it wants to be expressed. And as a friend of mine said the other day, who's done a lot of angelic work, she said, if they're asking you to do something, do it. It's not, they're generally not steering you wrong. Like there's some, even if some aspect of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, it does make sense in the broader picture. And this is not somebody who's like a practicing Christian, by the way, just kind of to say that. This is somebody who just does, but has done angelic work. Because that's another fallacy too. The idea that working with angels means that, you're working within this monotheistic construct or whatever. And I mean, I suppose they come out of that. But angelic beings really come out of ancient Babylonian, other kinds of Babylonian celestial and intermediary kind of figures. And then what they've morphed into when you look at the biblical version of angels, they're not, they're quite different. I had a lot of people always talk about you always hear the phrase biblically accurate angel, because most of our impression of angels is something we see like on the Victorian Christmas card angel, right? The one that's, they're usually very, frequently they have like the long blonde hair, and they're just like this, and they just look so kind and motherly and things like that. And then you look at these other ones, and they basically look like a giant blob of wings with eyeballs, and sometimes multiple heads. So yeah, so there's, that's the biblical angel. They're not, as I've said many times, I said when you, I think back to A Charlie Brown Christmas, and I don't know how many people, now it used to be a thing that was a foregone conclusion that everybody'd seen it. Nowadays, I think it's not, people kind of, and actually nowadays I think when people watch it, they think it's kind of weird, but they're doing a nativity play, as you would say in Ireland, and it was, and that's their Christmas play that they're doing, and Charlie Brown is brought in to be the director because he's depressed about Christmas, and Lucy says, oh, you should be the director of our play, and all that. But anyway, there's a point in there where there's this discussion of this Christmas tree, the Charlie Brown tree too is kind of a proverbial thing, and Linus decides he's going to get on stage and tell you what Christmas is all about, because Linus is, it's funny, when you read throughout all of the Peanuts cartoons, as I did over the years, Linus is kind of the theologian who ends up turning up. It's interesting. There's actually been whole books. There's like the parables of Peanuts and stuff. There's like whole books about the theology that comes out of that cartoon series. But he recites, and I want to say it's from Matthew, and I don't remember the exact numbers in my head. Was it Matthew? Or anyway, I did. It's that scene that they call the not the Annunciation, because the Annunciation is when the Virgin Mary learns that she's pregnant. Gabriel comes, but to tell her this. But this is when the angel appears to the shepherds, and it says, and they were tending their flocks at night, and lo, the angel of the Lord appeared before them, and they were sore afraid. That's the phrase that's used, sore, S-O-R-E. They're sore afraid. And people think, well, why are they afraid? Is it because they're simple shepherds and some weird, because if angels looked the way that they look in Victorian time, that's not something, you might be surprised, but that wouldn't really be scary, right? And, but I said, well, they're sore afraid because if it looks the way the Bible construes of angels, that would be absolutely terrifying. Hey, something just appeared in the head with 1 million eyeballs and 4 heads. I'd be scared too. So anyway, just kind of on the look of angels. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit about today was the spiritual path, and because I've got some new angelic things that I'm working with this morning, which I'm going to talk about, but it also got me thinking about the spiritual path, because if I'm going to be sharing these things with people, one of the first questions I always get with respect to my practice is, yes, but you work with the dark feminine, you work with Azrael, and in terms of goddesses, you work with dark goddesses like the Morrigan, you work with the goddess Kali, and people freak out about that. That's probably not a great marketing point for some people, especially because a lot of people get on spiritual path because they say, well, I'm looking for peace, I'm looking for happiness. And here's the thing about that. When you start on a spiritual path, there is definitely this perception from people, either people who are not on a spiritual path or people who are or people who think that this is why a spiritual path is appealing, because they say, oh, they have some kind of an experience. Okay, and the experience that they have, it can be an aha moment, an epiphany, as they say. It can be like a moment where they go, oh, I've suddenly realized a truth, and maybe they have legitimately realized a truth. Who knows? Or if people are talking in born again terms, the moment that they're saved, right? Or if we're talking about, you could have an experience, you could take a class on something that really piques your interest, or you could meet a holy person who, wow, they really kind of bowl you over. People get involved in spiritual paths for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes people, again, may suffer a lot of losses in their life, which is kind of what the angle that I tend to be dealing with, although it's not exclusively what I deal with. And so they say, I'm ready. As part of their transformation, they're ready for a change. They're ready to look at the bigger picture. Okay, so these are at least some of the reasons why people will get involved in a spiritual path. Some people are born just naturally being into it, like myself. But if you're on this path, what tends to happen is a lot of times especially if our initial experience has been like a really enlightening one, or one that has just been like an experience of pure bliss, that's what we think the path is. But the reality is, once you've gotten on the path, you realize that it's beset with all kinds of bear traps and monsters and things like that. And that's really the point of my work. It's like, okay, It's very easy to do spiritual work when, oh, you're away at some wonderful retreat somewhere where you have a massage therapist and you have an aromatherapy person and you have this, and oh, I'm away and I can sit and I can just enjoy being away from everything and experience my bliss and so forth. That's pretty much almost never how it works. I mean, you might be fortunate enough to have some times like that, but you sit down to meditate after you finally have that period of peace, and what happens? Your mind just immediately starts getting into all this crap, and then and then you find yourself more shaken up at the end of it than you were when you started. Okay, a good example of this is when I think I may have discussed this before, so so forgive me if I'm repeating myself here, but I have when I first met my guru. And who goes by the name Mata Amritananda Mai, which is basically Mother of Immortal Bliss. Amrita is the ocean of immortal bliss, right? And so she comes across as this, and that's the way she's marketed to people. She's just smiling, and she's she always just looks like she looks radiant, and then she hugs people when you hug her, and and people who sit in the room with her, like something legitimately happens to you. I was talking to somebody about it recently because she is coming around again to tour in August. And I said, sometimes even just sitting in the same room, I mean, there's something that happens. There's something that happens to you. There's something that happens to your energy field. And it's literally almost like this explosively liberating kind of feeling. It's hard to put into words. But it draws a lot of people to her because initially it's a very blissful and very ecstatic experience. So then people get involved. Some people go as far as to move to the ashram in India, or there's one in California. I think there might be another one in DC now. I don't know. There's a bunch of different ashrams now with different swamis who run it. Or there are people who they want to get involved in her programs and her tours, like people who get very, very involved in all of her work. And the first thing that those people find, I will see those people who will be like, oh, I'm so happy, I'm going to be doing a Seva at Amma's program. And you say, okay. And then they go to the program, and then inevitably I would see these people later bawling their eyes out in the corner. And they were just completely shaken, feeling completely broken. I've had my moments like that myself. I mean, I don't think I burst into tears anywhere necessarily, but places where I was just like, holy crap. Like, you could not believe the level of pettiness and just outright rage and hate that you'd feel from people at these programs. And these are supposed to be the high-ranking people running it. Some of them were really they were just real a-holes. I mean, big time. And you're like, oh my God. And so a lot of people finally just said, you know what, why am I doing these programs if every time I come, it's just going to be like one level of abuse after another? And the thing is, and that's why when I tell people that, the mother sitting there in her white sari, Mother of Immortal Bliss, she's Mother Kali. She's not Mother, and people say, I've had Westerners say to me, oh no, like I remember I had a Kali statue with me that I wanted her to bless at one of the things. Oh, why would you bring in Kali? I'm like, do you know who you're looking at? She's an embodiment of a deity, that's the deity. But Kali is not, in spite of her scary appearance, Kali is not, Kali is about liberation. She's about bringing clarity. She's about waking you up. And when you wake up, it's not just waking up to the big wide reality that's wondrous and beautiful. It's also everything that's terrible about it. And so when you get thrown into an experience like that, and this may be easier for me to say in hindsight, because when you're in the middle of it, you're just like, good, what am I doing this for? Because you think, people should just be able to work together and get along, right? Because we're all working towards the same, oh no. But think about that. That's what life is like. You're just getting on, you're trying to mind your own business, you're doing your work, you're doing, I just want to live my life, I just want peace, I just want happiness, I just want to get on with everybody. And is that what happens? No. Inevitably, there's somebody who's putting the fly in the ointment, right? There's somebody who, there's one person in every family, at least, right? There's one coworker who has to be, either an obstinate, a block, or a jerk about something. There has to be some kind of drama going on somewhere, and we just think, why does this have to go on? Why can't I just have peace? And a lot of people get on that path because they think that's what they're going to get. I'm going to get peace. And it's like, no, if you're going to have peace, you have to have peace in this context, right? You need to have peace in the context of all this other crap that goes on. The idea of stillness and being in the center. I remember, I think it was Curly who had said he had taken a London apartment, like in one of the noisiest sections of town, to learn to meditation, because that is really the place where you want to learn it. You want to learn it in a space where it's very easy to, learn how to meditate in a place with no distractions. But if you really want to really gain stillness within yourself, because your mind is already distracting itself, if you can learn to be in that space and not let those distractions affect you, then you've actually learned it. And that's really what the key is. The key is, it's like, yes, this kind of stuff's going to go on all the time. The world's not going to magically transform into unicorns and rainbows, and that's just, there's a drama to life, and it's both wondrous and it's terrible. And the idea is that you want to accept both. You can't just say, well, I want this piece and I'm going to bypass that piece. That's why when a lot of people talk about being light workers, and I had another live stream on this on my other channel, probably a couple months ago now, but I said, I don't think of, even though some people call me a light worker, I'm like, but I don't think of it that way, because to me, first of all, I'm not hierarchical in terms of light and dark. To me, they both have a purpose. I explained to people, I said, I practice, and really what I've learned through Amma is Tantra. And when people hear Tantra, they think, oh my God, they hear sex magic and things like that. And I'm like, no, that's a component of Tantra. It's not a component everybody engages in. I did a podcast, Katonia Conversations, they're called, on my Katonia channel with Lana Popovich, and she's she's on Psychosomatic Alchemy. That's another really interesting Instagram channel and also YouTube channel. But she was talking about, she has some Tibetan Buddhist initiation, and we were talking about what was called chod practice, or feeding your demons. And she also talks about that with Tantra. She says, yeah, Tantra, there's whole, subsets of Tantra that are completely celibate. They don't, there's no sex isn't involved with it at all. And it's not about sex and sex magic. That's something that's a colonial thing that was brought. This kind of salacious, when the Tantras were written, the Kama Sutra and things were initially translated, they were brought here, and people said, oh, it's about all this salacious sex stuff. It's like, no, it isn't. Tantra is a word that means weave, okay? And weave means that you are weaving all the different disparate threads of life, which, interestingly, is one of my doctoral professors pointed out, because she always talks about how there's always the hero's journey, right? We talk about the journey of the hero in terms of the mythology of our psychology and Western culture. She said, what would be an alternative feminine characterization of that journey? And she said, probably that of the weaver, the person who weaves. Like you see Athena or Minerva, or you see some of these goddesses who weave. And so there's this idea of weaving. And that's just the idea, is that you're weaving life. Tantra really at its base, what it means that you can be liberated or enlightened or whatever you want to call it. And you can also live a very normal life. You can do your normal things. You can enjoy your normal stuff. You don't have to be out in the woods somewhere fasting or whatever. And, that's not necessary. You can do it right here. And the reason that's considered to be a faster path to liberation is if you can learn to do it here, you can do it anywhere. Because you're able to understand the world and be still in it amidst all the distractions. That's where peace really comes from. Peace doesn't come from getting rid of all those distractions. It comes from being able to live with them. Okay? So that's what I mean when I say talking about a tantric path. Tantric, it has to do with the fact that that just by doing everyday stuff. And you'll see a lot of people, even people who are involved in Tantra, who get involved in the magical side of it, right? We always talk about what's high and what's low, and I don't like hierarchical terms either. What's high and what's low. It's like, no, everybody's kind of at a different place. If you are somebody who's at, oh, thank you for saying that. Oh, you're welcome. Yes, that's just it. That's the thing. When you talk about high and low, I don't like to talk about, even when we talk about ascension, I understand what people mean when they're using that term. The idea, I think of it more as like a shift of perspective or a shift of timeline. I don't think of it as we're ascending to something. I just don't like the whole idea of ascension. To me is the idea that somehow, and literally that's what my whole book is about, Death and the Maiden. We devalue the space that we're in because we think that there's something, that what's out there, what's celestial, is somehow better. And it's like, no, you can have it right here. That's what nirvana is. Nirvana or moksha. Moksha is not about what happens when you die. It's what happens right here. And People are capable of that, but it's really, really hard. Very few people are in that space, because to really be able to be in the world and to allow your emotions to flow, to allow yourself to flow with everything, and ultimately not have it really affect your inner peace is really, really hard. But that's kind of what we're trying, if we're trying to get to anything, that's really what it is. Just allowing things to kind of flow with whatever going on. And like anything else, it's not that we have to sit over here and not play the game. It's like, no, we're playing the game. We're part of the drama. We all do that. We've all been that. You know how much we all say, oh, we don't like the drama. But then like when someone comes over with gossip, we're like, oh, tell me. You know, we all like the drama. I mean, there's certain aspects of the drama that we like. Okay. Really, collective life has become something of a major drama. Just more something else on that point. Just to kind of what I'm talking about here. People who are interested in Kabbalah, which is kind of Jewish mysticism. And I just have the picture of the Tree of Life here. I was just trying to find one, and I was like, well, I have a little one that but this is the one from, this is on Dion Fortune's book. But the idea is that you're up here, this is Keter, this is the crown, this is kind of the, and it's what they call the Ein Sof, or the limitless light, right? And the idea is that creation manifests down the tree, kind of in the zigzag between these three pillars, and you end up in Malkut, which is the kingdom, which is where we are. That's the presence of God, is in the kingdom. I mean, people who are Christian and who recite the Lord's Prayer. And then at the end of it, if you're a Protestant, Catholics don't do this, but if you're a Protestant, you'll say, for the kingdom, the power, and the glory is yours forever and ever, amen. Well, that's a reference to this. It's Ata Malkut, Vegebura, Vegedula, Liolam, amen. I mean, that's Gedula. These are the pillars of severity and mercy, which they're translating as power and glory, and kingdom, of course, is Malkut. So Jesus is actually kind of doing a Kabbalah came much later than Jesus, but it was kind of a Kabbalistic idea there. But the idea is that you have this Tiferet point in the middle. And what Dion Fortune says, among some others, is that that's when people are spiritual aspirants. The idea is the spiritual aspirant is sort of moving up the tree, so to speak. Okay, that's what they're doing. And that when one reaches the Tiferet point, that's the mountaintop. That's like the Mount Sinai, where Moses is when he looks down when he's holding the Ten Commandments, right? There's this Sinai point. There's this that you look down. But as I actually have a card in my own deck about this called, I'm trying to remember what the name of the card is. It's basically got the trees, but it's the same idea that you're kind of standing on top of a mountain and you're looking down. And you can see an awful lot from that point, but you really can't see the fine details. When you actually start to climb down the mountain and get into the weeds, there's stuff there that you did not see from the top. That's also what they will call the Messiah point, and they also call it the Lucifer point, because if we think about Lucifer in terms of the mythology of the fall, because the idea is that that's the point at which you have your aha moment. You reach Tiferet, you have your aha moment. And then you fall right down again, because that's the fallen part. Because you might at that point, and this doesn't necessarily happen to everybody, but you might start to think that now you're enlightened and that you're special. Oh, I've learned something now I'm a spiritual teacher and I'm going to teach people. And that's the point at which you go back, you fall back down again, because yes, you have learned something. Another place to clarify that point is if you ever read Carlos Castaneda. Now, I know Castaneda is really controversial now for a lot of the stuff that he did, but there is some stuff in those books that is quite good, or that seems to come from someplace authentic. And if you read the first one, Journey to Ixtlan, the Yaqui Way of Knowledge, he has a section in there where he's talking to Carlos about, he talks about being the journey of the spiritual warrior, right? And he says, okay, well, your first point on the spiritual journey is the first thing that you achieve is clarity. Now it's clear. Now you can clearly see things for what they are. And he says, and now you have met your first enemy. Your first enemy is clarity. Okay? Because the idea is that as soon as we have one of those moments, we tend to hang on to that moment, and we think that that moment is now what defines us and makes us special. And it's like, okay, but it's a moment. It's like a milestone. It's like, good for you. You figured that out. Okay, there's a lot more to figure out. That's just like the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more. But some people, I have met people like this who will say, oh, yes, I've met so-and-so. She's enlightened. She wears white all the time. She's arrived. And I'm going, oh, I'll bet she has. But I don't usually say anything to them, but I'm just like, okay. But I don't trust people who say that they've arrived. Even the guru doesn't say that they've arrived. The guru is just kind of there. And when people have come to her, my guru, and have said to them, oh, mother, I had this wonderful vision of the Devi, you know, the goddess. Oh, I had this and that. And Amma will literally go to them, don't pay any attention to that. Literally, that's what she says. Not because she's trying to, you know, take the wind out of their sails, but she's kind of saying, okay, you know, yes, you want to cherish those experiences when you have them, but don't get stuck there. When I was in graduate school, with a lot of ministers, they would talk about being, there was one guy who would, I mean, a lot of them were Methodist, or some of them were more evangelical, but he said he'd been down south, and he was a minister candidate, and he said he was listening to one of those preachers on the radio, and he says, you know, all this guy talked about for an hour was the day he was saved. And he says, all I could think was, so what have you done since the day you were saved? Like, what have you done with your life? I mean, have you got on with your life? What else have you learned? Because generally, you have that, it's like the Six of Wands in the Tarot. You have that moment of triumph, but it's a moment, okay? And then we're going to go on. There's more stuff to do. There's more stuff to learn. I mean, we can celebrate that moment, sure. But there's more stuff to do, and there's more stuff to learn. And I think a lot of times, too, we get ourselves caught up in this split between what's good and what's bad. We'll say, oh, well, if I had a scary experience, I think about Doreen Virtue, okay? Those people who followed her, and she had all those angel decks and Ascended Masters decks and stuff, and then she told everybody to throw them out because she suddenly became hardcore Catholic. And probably because she had an experience that scared her. And it's like, yeah, but it's not the idea of if I have a scary experience, that means evil's in my life and I have to banish it from my life. It's like, no, what's the scary experience about? You know, what's the monster there actually trying to teach you? The monster's part of all this too. It's not something separate. I mean, yeah, it's not like you're looking to necessarily invite certain forces to be part of your life. But, and obviously you want to protect your energy. You want to keep it so that whatever's coming into your life is what you need. You don't necessarily want influences that maybe, but, as Jake Stratton Kent used to say, he would say, well, I don't know. He says, sometimes I think it's okay to descend into a little chaos. You know, because you can, you know, something could potentially be learned from it. Now, I mean, I guess the concern is that people will go off that edge and maybe not come back from it. But it's not about, you're going to have a combination of experiences. And sometimes if you have certain types of experiences, I mean, yeah, a lot of times we might have a mentor to take us through. But again, you always have mentors. You always want to check the motives of mentors. Like, do they have something vested in it? I have met people who have thought of as spiritual leaders, and you find out that sometimes they have an agenda. Not everybody does, but it's hard. It's kind of like finding a good doctor and a good hairdresser. It's like trying to find a good person who's gonna who is a right fit for you and your path to help you. I mean, ultimately, in the end, we have to do everything kind of ourselves. So, and inside of ourselves. I am going to do our reading for today. So let me lay our cards out, and I want to show you one other quick thing. So let's see. Okay. So, So what do our viewers and those who may be viewing this after need to know right now? It's funny. I was talking about Tantra and this one card comes up. The quick thing I was going to mention is that I have been working on a new deck for myself, and it is only kind of in a prototype form, and I'm not even done with it. This is like just part of the sections, but they are Enochian cards, and because I'm working a lot with angels, and kind of what I've gotten from them is that they would like me to work in the angelic language, which is, at least this is the one that we know. I don't know if there's others. But, you know, they're, so these almost become like flashcards. You have the Enochian word, I have the transliteration, and then I have what the meaning is, although I'm finding is I'm trying to just work with the ones I have so far. I'm like, look, I got like 120 cards so far. I should be able to, even if it's a little awkward, it's kind of like if you go to a foreign country and you don't speak the language and you've just got the phrase book and you're trying to communicate that way. That's kind of the way I feel right now. But similarly, as I can communicate, the angelic beings can communicate things to me that I understand in English, but it's kind of like if you go to a foreign country, and yes, maybe they speak English there, but when you make an attempt to speak their language, they usually appreciate that, and this is kind of the same thing. I got a really interesting message this morning because I just pulled a few of them, and it was the card for his, okay? There's a card for justice, and there's a card for the moon. And the way that that translated in my mind was like there's some kind of somebody's justice or some kind of truth or something at the full moon, which is going to be at the end of this week, actually, same day as the summer solstice. I think it's interesting that the full moon and the summer solstice are on the same day. It's going to be hot as, it's going to be ridiculously hot here, but so I don't know exactly what that means, but that came up this morning. And they're using the word justice, but they're saying you're using it, what I understood that to mean was more in the sense of truth, rather than like, somebody like being in court and having something exacted in that way, like justice, more in the sense, justice can also have to do with balance too. But somehow this has to do with the truth. They said, and they said it kind of connected back to what I had said in one of the other live streams about, because literally the message I've gotten that seemed to be a lot of people have gotten is that the presidential candidates that are running right now, like that neither one of them is going to be the candidate somehow in the end. And I'm like, that makes no sense. But that, and again, I don't know. That's just what they're kind of saying. So that implied to me, I asked, does that have something to do with that message? And they said, yeah, it does. So I don't know if something's going to be said or there's going to be something that's said that day that's a key to why things are going to change. Don't know. Just throwing it out there. But let's move on to this reading. Okay, so the first card I have is Clinging to the Past. Okay. Now it's interesting because I was talking something about timelines. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is like my allergies are really bad this morning. Clinging to the past, and it's so this is Five of Cups energy, but they're definitely this idea of kind of being in someone being in their head, with all of this stuff, and they say, well, take that box, put a bow around it, and just leave it at the curb, like say thanks for all that, and then just kind of get rid of it. That's the energy of this card. But one thing that came up in a conversation I had with a friend yesterday, I had a friend visiting for her, had been her birthday, and she was over visiting. And she said to me, she's been seeing a lot in different places about the idea of timeline shifts. And she said she felt like what some people were saying was that the choices, and I've been talking about this choice all month, that seems to be coming up between, do you do things the old kind of Capricornian way, or are you moving towards the new way? And that some people are connecting that to a kind of timeline shift, that somehow we may be shifting from one, like I feel like almost, I don't know if this seemed this way to you. I feel like when we had the maybe the 2016 election, and then maybe a little bit before, like they just seemed to me like we suddenly shifted into another reality. I remember there was this 11-year-old kid who was like a genius, and they would always talk about the Large Hadron Collider and the fact that people were doing all these, like smashing up all these molecules in this massive thing. The idea is it going to blow a hole in the space-time continuum, and of course the scientists are like, nah, it's ridiculous, and maybe it is ridiculous. I don't know, But nonetheless, at that time, I remember this kid floated the idea that the Hadron Collider had already done it. It had punctured some kind of a hole, and now we were going to kind of move into another reality. And everybody laughed at that. It's so funny. Even I laughed at it at the time, but I'm thinking, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what's happened, but I do somehow feel like we've kind of ended up in some space. I'm like, how did we get here? I mean, maybe you could point to history and say how we got here, but nonetheless, I mean, some of this just may literally be because people are clinging to the past. Because we don't, there's a new way of doing things, and maybe we don't want to let go of the old. But there seems to be something, I don't know why, it jumped into my head that says something to do with whatever this kind of shift is that's going on between reality as we've known it, whether you want to think about it as a timeline shift or not. It's nonetheless, the new way of doing things as opposed to the old way, okay? The inner feeling of which we are unaware is fighting. Literally what I just said. People who are fighting or resisting the old way. That's when you cling to the past, when you say, no, I have to, I must do it the old way. That's the way I have to do it if I'm going to be, a good citizen or responsible adult, whatever, and instead of trying to create a new way, the right thing to do is to, so we fight the impulse to do something new. The external feeling of which we're aware is ordinariness. Okay. Remember I was saying about Tantra and about how that's just about being an ordinary person. I know I had a client who had been doing certain spiritual things, and I said, well, really, the only thing you have to do is be ordinary. So so again, it's but to the point that I was just making, it can also be that some people feel that they, in order to do kind of the ordinary, regular, responsible thing, they kind of have to do it the old way. Okay. But sometimes we think change has to manifest as something very extraordinary, but it doesn't. It could just be, you being involved in day-to-day life and getting into day-to-day life. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be about, something that happens in a, this other context where you are, where you're, I don't know, having wild visions and doing things. I mean, a lot of stuff happens just in a very ordinary way. But that sense of ordinariness may also make us think that certain things are going on. Sorry to move back to this, but I'm making breakfast and my hands were full. But 2016 definitely felt a shift. There was something very, very strange that happened, and to me, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to really even talk about the politics that we're in. I don't want to talk about politics on any of these. I just don't. Any more than I feel like I need to based on the messages I get. But it's just because it's just so contentious, and I'm like, okay, I just this is really supposed to be more of a live stream, just to kind of give talk to people about how do you guide your way through whatever the heck's going on, right? So, but yes, I definitely felt that shift as well, and I think a lot of people did, and it was commented on quite a bit. So that was just one interesting theory. I don't know whether it's correct or not, but that was kind of interesting. Okay, so now we have the card that is the advice card. We have the guilt card. Okay. And as you can see, there's this woman, and it's got like these scary looking hands coming in and pulling at her hair. And yeah, so guilt is just the way, so guilt seems to be the thing. That's the thing that we need to let go of. These ideas that somehow are bad or wrong or need to be fixed or improved, or that, oh, I didn't do the right thing, I made a mistake. Remember I was talking about there was a lot of people who just kind of, just by way of example, we're in job situations where they had it's like, okay, you need to leave this job. Now you have an opportunity to do the new thing. But they said, no, I just got to go back and get another job like the one I had. And now they're going, oh crap, why did I do that? like it's that kind of energy, because then now they realize that they hate this one as much as they hated the other one. That's just one example, but that's I think that's the vibe that I'm getting here, is that a lot of people feel that there's a way to be grounded, ordinary, and responsible, that they're fighting against all this other stuff because it's too different, and I don't see how that's going to work, so I'm just going to continue to do things the old way. But I feel like but I feel like people are then feeling like, oh my gosh, now I feel stuck. Eight of Swords too is a card of getting mentally unstuck. It's a card of overanalysis, when we overthink and then we start to doubt ourselves and second guess ourselves. But our outcome card here is our favorite one, the Patience card. This is the Seven of Pentacles, and I always feel like this is a more positive Seven of Pentacles. In a lot of decks, the Seven of Pentacles is represented as, like in esoteric decks, it says the futility card. The idea of, I've put all this work in, and what's the use? It's not going anywhere, right? But this is simply saying, yes, it is going somewhere. It's just, you're not there yet, okay? You're not there yet. There's definitely, even when I do the readings for the Liminal Tarot channel, like the ones I was doing in the past few days, I'm still seeing this energy around a lot of the signs where it's just saying, you're on the edge of something. Like, don't give up now that you're on the edge of it. I mean, we've got a lot of 8 energy here. We've got 2 8s. So this is about, that's that area, you're not quite at the point of completeness yet, but you're getting closer. I mean, if 10 is the point of completion, 8's pretty far along the path. So, and a lot of times when we can't see, we tend to look back. I'm remembering a story that I had read. It was a YA story from years ago. I think Margaret Mahy had written it, about a girl who undergoes this initiation, and one of the things they tell her as she's going, and the initiation scene's actually really quite interesting, because even though it's not the way these actual initiations necessarily work, there is something about the psychology of it that is actually very much like an initiation. So I thought, that was pretty interesting that this young adult author, who I don't necessarily associate with spiritual stuff, kind of came up with that. But one of the things that they said to the girl as she was going through her initiation is, whatever you do, don't look back. Don't look behind you. That's what comes into my head. Like, looking back is going to be what will create a disaster if you don't look back. If you look back. So, and again, I don't wish to be, saying that that's what this is saying here. But yeah, there's the idea that, you know, you're on this path now. This is not the time to turn around and think, maybe I should just go back to where I was. Keep going, you know? And even if there's these difficulties, to the point that I was making earlier, the fact that there's difficulties doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. Okay, and if you're blocked going a certain way, maybe again, it's like being in a maze. Maybe that's the way that you don't want to go. But you know, and so you might need to take more of a time out. A lot of times I think we feel like, especially when we have certain obligations and things like, oh, I don't have time. I have to figure this out this second, and I have to do it right now. Because that's the other energy I've seen this month. There's a lot of night energy in the tarot. You know, the Knight of Wands, Knight of Swords, which are like, okay, I just need to rush in and do something right now. And then you rush in and you're not really, because you feel that you have to react, you're not really thinking through what you're doing, or you're not allowing all of the information to come in before you actually make a decision, and then it may be too hasty of a decision. So there's definitely an energy of that as well. So yeah, so that's our messages for today. That's what I'm getting. For those of you who joined late, I am going to be posting, I'm starting my Azrael channeling sessions. Well, I've started them already. I've edited 2 of them. One of them I have up is unlisted. I'm going to put the other one up. And what I'm getting is I want to put them out actually on the summer solstice, which is this Friday. So I'm going to create a little introductory video that's going to be like maybe 5 minutes tops. That's going to explain a little bit about what these sessions are and why what I'm doing with them. And then, and again, the sessions are what they are. They're not anything, they're obviously not scripted because they're channeled. And I'm just looking to see what comes out. And sometimes I feel like we're kind of like sputtering a little bit to a start here, but I feel like that's a flow that I'm going to get into, and hopefully that's a flow that's going to develop as we go on. Plus, again, I'm working with these Nokian cards. So, and I find as I'm doing that more information is just coming in my day-to-day life when I'm not setting aside time to do that as well. So, so it'll be interesting to see where all of that leads, because really when you're on a journey like that, and no matter how much you've learned, the journey is always ongoing. It's not something that has a finite ending point at some point. So it's just something that just seems to always be ongoing. And I think if there was nothing else to learn and do, I think you'd be, well, probably all be bored out of our minds. But there always is, reality is way bigger than us. There's always things to learn. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me. If any of you are fathers, if there's any men who've joined, or if there's any, or if you're going to be celebrating Father's Day, happy Father's Day to your fathers. Like I said, my father is passed away now, but we will be celebrating for my brother-in-law, which I don't know. I always have this thing about Mother's and Father's Day. I'm like, I think it's just kind of for my own, because it can get out of hand. Then you can, like, everybody you know is a mother, and you're the mother of your cat. And, it can get out of hand with the gift giving and stuff. So, but my brother-in-law is the only one left in the family who would still be considered to be a dad. So yeah, so we're celebrating that today. Anyway, everybody have a great rest of your Sunday. I hope you have a great start to your week, and of course I will be here tomorrow morning. So take care.